Welcome back to Gene and Roger Talk Movies. It's our dear friend Scott Eggleston, director of Bad Bones and the upcoming Theater of Pain.
That's right.
And I don't know if you were being sarcastic with me.
He's here again. But that's awesome.
I just don't know if he was being sarcastic because earlier this week he texted me going, "Hey guys, sorry I missed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 episode, but can we do Under the Skin? I'd love to come on for that." Were you legitimately sad you missed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
I enjoy coming on your show and talking about movies.
Okay.
So I did not see that one, so of course I could not come on and talk about it.
Okay, very good. Gene, where are you at with Under the Skin, the movie we're doing today?
Under the Skin. Yeah, it's just getting a little old there. Scarlett Johansson, you can see it's just a young Scarlett Johansson.
Oh, it's only 10 years ago.
It's ancient. Well, 2013, wasn't it? 2013?
I think you're right. Yeah, 12 years.
So, I mean, we're still early in 2025, but, we're getting there. We're not getting any younger there, Scott.
No, we're not, Gene.
No, we're
What
not.
do you think of the movie?
Stay on topic. Yeah, I might have a hard time with this episode. But, yeah, the movie's good. I like this movie. It's good horror, and it poses. I like movies that have great thematic elements, and I think this movie has that. All of the thematic elements of this movie are bleak, and I don't think they present our culture in a very positive light. You might even go to say that that sometimes, you have to wonder if even our culture, our humanity is even worth saving. And I think this movie makes the point that maybe we're not worth saving at all. So, yeah. But I like the movie because it's horror, and good horror should make you feel uncomfortable. And parts of this movie really do that.
I am so glad Scott is here. Scott, what do you think about this film?
Yeah.
That was not the impression I got from this movie, what Gene just said.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, I had seen this movie before, which is why I recommended it for your show. I thought, and watching it again, I think this is an incredible movie. There's a lot going on in this movie. As I said before, I appreciate movies that they show you something different, give you a different perspective. You could argue this movie is very artsy. This is Jonathan Glazer, who just recently, his last film was A Zone of Interest, which had a lot of buzz. He also did Birth, Sexy Beast, movies like that. So he has a very interesting eye for film. And this is a movie that makes you uncomfortable on purpose, obviously. Having it, share the point of view of an alien, literally. The whole movie feels that way. It feels very alien, starting from its, score or a soundscape. I'd say it's definitely,
which is awesome.
Yeah, more of a soundscape and a score. But yeah, definitely right from the very beginning, it puts you in your place about where you're going with this movie, because it makes you feel alien. I mean, you feel everything's alien. But I think this is a great movie. It's not for everybody, obviously, and maybe some people might be put off by the unconventional aspects, such as long periods with no dialogue, and,
right,
and just unconventional way of telling a story. I'm not sure how soon you want to go into the plot, but I think it's a worthwhile movie. It is a tragedy, so it's not super uplifting, as a lot of horror movies aren't. But it's an interesting tragedy, and we're seeing.
Okay, so here's my thought.
Okay.
This movie should have been called Scarlett Johansson Drives a Van. I cannot get by the number of Scarlett Johansson driving a van scenes in this movie. This movie's an hour and 45 minutes long, and I swear to God there's only an hour's worth of actual material if you took out the I'm driving in a van. Why did this director decide I've got to show her in this van so many times? We get the point right away that she's picking up men and bringing them back to her little lair and doing whatever it is she does. But what are we doing there? Why do we have to have so many scenes like that?
I mean, this is based on a book, so I can only assume that was also in the book. I don't know for sure. But I think like a lot of movies, it sort of sets up what her routine is. And then, of course, goes off of that. But yeah, you're right. There is a lot of that. And it probably, I'm sure, could have been trimmed to an hour and a half.
An hour.
But that didn't bother me because of the mood or the spell this movie casts.
But I also am... I love the fact that you said it's like you're an alien as you're watching this, because all throughout this movie, there's nothing I could attach myself to on any level with this film.
Right.
It's just this film that occurs. The score is amazing and awesome. I don't get who is the motorcycle guy. What's the connection there with him? This movie is really hard to get a handle on because nothing is explained. And you mentioned it's a book. Maybe it's because you have to read the book in order to know what's going on.
No, you don't.
Who are the motorcycle people?
The motorcycle people, well, I love the whole thing with the vans. I love it. Because isn't the theme of the movie is that her emerging humanity, and part of humanity, part of what we do as humans is just routine stuff, and part of it just her becoming more human is her driving the van. So it goes hand in hand. You can't leave out her emerging growth without putting her in what she's doing. She's driving around picking up men and
only men.
And only men, yeah. But then I don't understand the black tarish sequences, what's really happening, and I don't know if we're really supposed to understand that. But we get the point. They're meeting their demise, for sure. But her driving in the van, looking and trying to come up with things to say, and that's just walking around the city, falling down, being uncoordinated. That's just her growing as a human. I think it fits hand in hand with her growth. And then the motorcycle guys, which I kind of appreciate as being an ex-motorcycle dude. It's like they're driving super bikes.
That's right, yeah.
So I appreciate that.
In the rain. And
in
that
the
guy's
rain.
going
Really fast.
Yeah.
It made me think is that when I was in college, I had a sport bike, and I had these soft rubber Continentals on them, and could I go fast in the rain? Oh, yeah. It made me think of my college.
Well,
I just threw that in there.
The director specifically hired a professional motorcycle racer to do those scenes. Yeah.
Is that the actor who plays it? Oh,
yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, clearly, like Scarlett Johansson, she is not alone. There are other aliens along with her, and so they formed like a team. And so the people on the motorcycles they're all like a group. And they're, in a way, I think of them as kind of being like maybe a support group. Because there is one scene in the movie where the guy in the motorcycle, Scarlett Johansson, there's a lot of standing in dark rooms. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of standing in very well-lit light rooms that don't have any walls. That happens frequently. So there's Scarlett Johansson standing in a black room. And the guy on the motorcycle's walking around her and like examining her. Kind of like she's like a new edition. She's a new version. And maybe he's got to check it out to make sure it's still operating correctly. It's just like maybe something's not working quite right, or he has questions. And so he was walking around her, and that's the impression I get. They're all working together, and the guys in the motorcycles, they support her. She reaches out to them. They come back, especially that scene on the beach. And
that's a chilling scene.
Yeah, that's the horror of this movie, and that scene is super uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. I mean, in massive ways.
Yeah, and there's no gore or jump scares or anything.
No,
it's all implication about what's going on. But I was just going to say that, and for your viewers, I assume everyone watching this has seen the movie, because we're really
spoiled. You're right.
Blasting the plot.
Gene and Roger talk movies. That's how we roll.
All different ways, but I mean, I think it's to me it's obvious that the motorcycle guys, because the first time we see the motorcycle guy, he drives, he stops and he goes into a ditch and pulls out a girl's body and takes her. You see him walking toward the van, and the next thing you see is Scarlett Johansson undressing this now. I don't think she's completely dead, because we see her like tears falling from her eyes, the girl that he brought back and is lying on the ground. And Johansson's clearly replacing her, because she takes her clothes off and puts them on herself. But I think the motorcycle guys, I agree with you, they're a support group. I'd say that they are the handlers of these women that are here on our planet, apparently to lure men into a death trap so they can use them for some kind of nourishment or food or something, as we see the process of the black room. I like to call it the interstellar roach motel that she lures them into, and they follow her as she's undressing, and they slowly sink into the black ooze, and she doesn't. and they go underneath and eventually dissolve or turn into a form of meat or something that's then sucked out. Which all of this is shown in the abstract, but very effective and unnerving. So I agree with you. There's a lot of vagaries in this movie, which in the past you've also kind of hadn't had too much of an issue with, maybe because you've found it more easily to absorb what's happening. Where in this movie, it's not a lot's explained, obviously.
No.
But
that's a good thing, though.
But that didn't bother me, and again, I'd seen it more than once, so it made more sense the second time.
Yeah, I am not a big fan of this movie. Is it worth a watch one time? Yeah, of course, but I just was so detached from what was happening in this movie, and the biggest problem I had, and Gina's trying to explain it by saying she's trying to assimilate herself into our culture or whatever, the driving around, God, I hate that. And I did a little research as to why is there so many scenes of that. And apparently most of those interactions with random people on the street was legitimate interactions with random people on the street. And then the director would be like, hey, can you sign this release? Because we want to use this footage in our movie that we just filmed of you.
That's awesome.
But I will also point out a lot of those interactions on the street, the accents are so thick, you cannot understand
Glasgow,
what they're
Scotland,
saying.
by the way. Yeah. Turn on the subtitles.
You almost have to if you really care about what they're saying, and none of it's really that important anyway, because it's just, do you live alone?
It's just banter back and forth.
I found after a while I did have the subtitles on. I turned them off because essentially they were just complimenting her on her looks, and you could get that information, and then I didn't turn them on again. But yeah, that was an interesting idea to actually ambush people. They were real people. I also did some homework where they had that van set up with hidden cameras, so they didn't know they were on camera. And then later, obviously, they had to sign a release. And I'm sure some people didn't, but the ones that did, I guess they used them all.
You're right. It's
a long portion. But again, this movie is to me, is pretty mesmerizing. So I didn't really notice. Now, maybe having seen it once, I knew that eventually that was going to resolve and something else was going to happen. But I found, like you had mentioned, you found it hard to connect to this character, but I found it was, yes, that's true at the beginning, especially because she's so predatory and apparently just indifferent to everything else. So like the scene on the beach, right? The baby on the scene on the beach is so terrifying. Or like I noticed too, when I saw it again, that whole beach scene is kind of a metaphor for the entire movie, right? Because the first thing you see is, she's talking to this guy on the beach. And then I think before that, actually, you see like there's a woman who's swimming, or the dog goes out into the surf. The dog goes out into the surf, and then you see the woman jump in with her clothes on. The dog's being pulled out. The dog's being pulled out to sea, so the woman chases the dog, and then the man runs into the water to chase the woman who's being pulled out to sea, and then the guy that Scarlett Johansson's talking to runs and gets the guy and pulls him out.
He has a wetsuit,
and the guy then runs back in because his wife is going to die. And then she goes over and clubs the guy over the head who helped rescue the guy and pulls him away. In the meantime, this baby is screaming on the beach and the baby's going to die without help. But Scarlett Johansson's character ignores the baby completely and just drags the guy off, which I thought was rather interesting.
Well, as does the motorcycle guy, because he shows back up and
that's right,
grabs up all
picks up the clothing,
tent and
but
stuff
leaves
from
the baby. Leaves the baby there.
Yeah.
And that sound just lingers when she's sitting in the car. And the guy, I guess, is slumped in the other seat. But there's, I guess, another baby in a car next to it or something. And that sound is so...
Later scene,
Was it later? Okay. Yeah. Anyway, I was wanting that sound to go away because it was just so disturbing, that crying baby. Because
that's pretty horrific.
You knew that baby was going to die because it had no one to rescue it.
That was the best part of the movie for me, that sequence there.
It's a great scene. Yeah. But my point was that whole scene kind of encapsulates what happens to her as she gets pulled out and can't return. She gets pulled into our culture, society, whatever. Like when she falls, I think it's the first time we see something gets flipped inside of her. And then after that, she starts, doing weird things. Like she looks in the mirror, lets the guy go, the deformed man she picks up. Another interesting point we could bring up about this movie.
Yeah,
Adam Pearson, the actor who's still acting.
Right.
This was his first movie.
But so that's its natural appearance?
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
He has the...
Not
disease.
Sure what the
I don't remember
is,
the name of it, but it's non-cancerous tumors.
Sure.
I think he's in A Different Man with Sebastian Stan. That's his right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, she gets pulled out into the ocean of Earth, I guess, and can't go back because she's starting to feel things. And then her handler, I'm just going to call him the motorcycle guy, starts looking for her, right? Because she's on the lam. When she lets the Adam Pearson guy go.
She leaves on purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that whole sequence on the beach is kind of like maybe, and also falling down, like I'm going to mirror what you said, is that it's like a transformation for her. Because at the beginning, she's all about her purpose. But I think the more time she spends driving in the van, she becomes it's very little, but I think especially those events happening kind of she starts to feel some empathy, there's little feelings there. She's not quite so alien, and so she lets the guy go, and then she gets driving the van. She gets stuck in fog.
Steals the van.
And then she abandons the van and just is walking.
And that was also a moment of great joy for me when she abandoned the van.
No more van.
You really had problems with the van.
It's funny you mention this stuff because I had a instructor in film school that said he hated scenes of people walking in movies because he said nothing happens when people are walking. Which I can understand his point, but at the same time, not always true. Just like anything in film,
right.
you always
Did you
have
like this
exceptions.
teacher?
What's that?
Did you like this teacher?
We got along fine, Gene.
I don't think I agree with that at all.
Right.
It depends
there are
on
lots
the
of
movie.
scenes in
His
the
point
movie.
was that, and in fact, in student films, this is absolutely true. If people are just walking in a student film, it's usually just to pad the running time. Nothing's happening. But in obviously more advanced film, that's not true at all because lots of things can happen, or it doesn't matter because like her routine I think is kind of important. But I agree that it could have been cut down.
No,
but
I think it's fine.
You think it's fine? Okay. But as she does get more human, I mean, she does start feeling things clearly. She almost has a physical relationship with a guy, which I wanted to ask you guys about that scene because something happens there that the first time I saw that, I'm like, what? And then I later kind of figured out what happened. So I was kind of curious. They're about to do the deed. And then
have sex,
Yeah, and then she freaks out, sits up and grabs a lamp and looks at herself. We're seeing her back. Looks at herself between her legs, and then
she's never done it before.
The next time we see her, she's walking away. So that's over. But
right.
But what we learn at the end of the movie, like that she obviously is not human. I mean, we get the idea she's an alien, right? But we don't know that she's not literally human. But the title of the film, it kind of indicates what's going on there, that she's actually another race of alien. Anyway, I think that when she grabs that lamp in that scene, it's because she realizes that something's about to happen and she doesn't have the equipment for it. I mean, she's not complete. She's not a human being, so she doesn't have that, and that's why she flips out.
Yeah,
as she starts to realize the dichotomy of what she's doing, because she starts to. I mean, she's trying to experience what it's like to be a human being, but she's not one. She runs into a wall.
I think another telling scene is she wants to try this human thing out, and she's in a restaurant, right? And she has the piece of delicious cake. She has no reason to be eating. Doesn't need to be eating. Probably all energy is probably, I would guess, supplied by that black ooze stuff, right? But she tries to eat some of that cake, and of course, kind of predictable reaction is blah. Because she's got no purpose for food, but she tried it.
I think super rich, maybe, and she wasn't equipped.
Well, and she also doesn't seem to need to sleep or anything either.
Yeah, she doesn't need these.
Well, she
things.
does sleep in the woods.
She did, but that was kind of after she had become more humanized, right?
Right.
Early on, it's clear that she's not sleeping, she's not eating, because she just goes in, does whatever she does with that guy, and then just heads right back out to get more.
I also noticed this time when I watched it that when she falls down or when she leaves when she runs away, essentially, that the weird score stops and doesn't come back until she's being chased at the very end, and she's the victim and not the predator.
Right.
In another disturbing scene.
Yes, it is.
Treats us with.
Well, and I guess that kind of plays up with Gene's this is just a bleak movie when it's talking about humanity, because she meets this other person and then gets an experience of what humanity really can do.
Yeah, scum of the earth she runs into.
I have to mention though that this guy is there in the woods in Scotland, right? And I guess Scotland at one time, before all the Scottish arrived, it was was kind of more thickly forested, so indigenous wise there should be more forest there. But anyway, there's a forest there, and she's escaping. I don't know. And it's interesting that there's one motorcycle guy at the beginning, but now there's like a gang of motorcyclists. Right. Yeah. And they are looking for her. Mm-hmm. Something they need to find her, and they are screaming all over the roads in Scotland.
I guess these aliens that mastered space travel don't know how to use a tracking device. Right. They didn't implant one in their their people.
Star Trek is fiction. Come on. So they're searching for her, but she's off just trying to, I think, just escape or trying to. I don't think
she has much of a plan.
No, she has no plan. She's just walking, which is really all she can do. Yeah, and she runs into this. She's in the forest, and she runs into this hut. And actually, she's walking down a trail first, and she runs to this guy, and he's kind of a creepy guy. It's a creepy conversation, right? And then she's runs into it's raining, of course, and then she runs into this outdoor hut. Mm-hmm. It had a weird saying. It's like, if trail walkers are welcome to stay here, something like that. Yeah, instead of
it's like a hunter cabin.
Yeah, instead of using the word hikers. Yeah, but she's staying in there, and then the guy comes back and kind of begins to molest her, and she kicks him and gets away. But I just noticed that guy himself is a logger. He was driving one of the more, I just got to say this, but he's driving one of the most sophisticated looking trucks I think I've ever seen in my life.
With the crane on it.
Yeah, it had a crane on it, and the back had these sets of wheels, and it's like, wow, that's a really sophisticated truck. Sorry, I just had to say that because
he knows how to drive that truck, but not how to treat a person.
Yeah, he knows how to drive a truck really well, but he's not a very good human. Right, and then he chases her and tries to rape her, which is a pretty horrific scene in and of itself. Yeah, and then
and he gets a little rude surprise.
He gets a rude surprise. Right. Yeah.
That was because we don't know what she really is until that scene. I mean, we're kind of relieved, obviously, when he's sort of spooked. So he stops, even though they draw that scene out for.
He stops, but does something even more horrific after that.
Right, yeah.
Well, I think
this is a tragedy, Roger.
It is a tragedy, but we know she's alien from the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah.
And it's another interesting thing is that I keep going back to that first girl that we see, because number one, we see tears falling from her face, which I think is an interesting detail, because this. I wonder what the turnover is for this job, because she doesn't last that long. Scarlett Johansson doesn't last that long, at least from what the timeline of the movie presents. And I also like that scene that you point out where she's just standing there and the guy's looking her in the eye to see. I think that you're exactly right, that he's checking her to make sure to see if she's turning into or having these temptations of being lured into being a person.
I like your train of thought there, that this has happened before.
Yeah. Well, clearly he's done this before. He's picking her up and he's replacing her and everything, and then at the end we see him standing on the mountain or the hill, right? Like, where'd she go? I can't find her.
Right.
And
which I think is something that maybe hasn't happened before.
That she just completely disappears.
That she disappears because those guys seem to be pretty desperate to find her.
Well, they're very efficient, right? Like, if you remember when the Adam Pearson, the deformed man, gets away. He tracks him down immediately, and steals somebody's car and throws him in the trunk and drives off.
Yeah.
So this isn't new. I mean, he's very well equipped to deal with any sort of contingency. Although you'd wonder how long this could go on without the police getting involved. I mean, it's true of any horror movie where there's mass deaths going on or disappearances.
I think that, to me, that kind of goes to the point is that, because there's a witness to that, the deformed man being kidnapped, but nothing happens.
She's just sitting there watching him.
She's just watching. Hi, bye, and then
steals her car.
All these things happen, and I think it just shows us, do we really care for each other? Maybe we should all have more empathy.
I mean, I definitely felt something for her character, especially toward the end. When she's completely doesn't know what she's doing, where she's going, and then the one person she runs into turns out to be the worst person to run into. And then, of course, by the end, I mean, she dies horribly. And however, I will say I really like that last shot. We should talk about the visual elements in this movie, because they're very interesting. In the last shot, we see the pillar of black smoke.
Yep.
going up into the sky. The camera tilts up into the snowfall.
Right.
And then we lose the smoke, and it's just the snowflakes hitting the lens, which to me looked like space travel. It looked like you were moving when you really weren't. It was still, and it kind of reminded me just like old effects shots from other movies like Star Wars, for example, where the camera's not moving, the effects are moving toward you, but it looked like we were maybe going back into the sky, which is, is that her soul or whatever? I don't know, but this movie is very interesting visually. I haven't seen many of Glazer's other movies. I saw Sexy Beast a long time ago, but I haven't seen Zone of Interest, which I heard is amazing.
Zone of Interest is amazing.
But yeah, there's, along with the Aliens soundtrack, you've got a lot of, I wouldn't say weird angles. I mean, it's not overly weird, but you definitely feel that it's not normal, right? I mean,
It's
the
not
way
normal.
it's photographed and everything is definitely
especially
goes with
the
that
house.
alien vibe.
Yeah, the house with the
weird-
tar.
The
pit.
tar,
That's a pretty weird house.
I mean, that was again one of those things. I hadn't seen that before in a movie. Especially you guys have seen a lot of horror movies, a lot of ways to kill people in horror movies. That was an unusual one.
And it's a cool effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting is that the men they're transfixed somehow, is that they offer no resistance as they start to sink into the ooze. They just go down into the ooze, and there's no fighting back. And it's
Well,
like
it's
one
a
of
mesmerization, I think.
yeah.
right?
There's one of the victims is still awake while is completely submerged.
Oh yeah, the guy that's dissolves
And there's
completely,
another
yeah.
victim that's
that was
awake
unnerving.
still.
Kind of floating in that soup or whatever, and
Yeah.
then sees the other guy floating in the soup.
Yeah, and
he
he's still alive.
reaches out to him.
and then he
Yeah.
just starts falling
Kinda
apart, and then
slides
he's
apart.
He like implodes.
Yeah.
It's quite disturbing.
and then it's just left his skin, just the outside.
Under the skin. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And well,
there
of
you
course, then his meat or whatever is then into that chute. There's some kind of meat chute.
Yeah, there's like a conveyor belt of I thought it was
Yeah.
like a conveyor belt of meat products.
Yeah.
And
I mean, they don't tell you what's going on, but I think we can figure it out. They're
They
being
don't.
harvested for something.
Something is definitely happening, but
Yeah.
there's no answers really in this movie that are easy to grab.
True. I'll give you that. You should watch it again. Maybe it would go.
This is the second time I've seen it. I
Okay,
watched
okay.
it when it first came out and had clearly forgotten about the fact that Scarlett Johansson drives a van all the time.
you just not gonna let that go.
Oh, I hate that. But
It wasn't bad. It was a nice van. I was thinking that's a kind of a
Well,
cool
it's funny you
van.
mention that because the way they have her dressed, like she's a prostitute, I guess they kind of dress her that
No,
way.
that's
She's
just
driving the most
can't she just-
unsexy vehicle known
Can't she
to
just
man.
be a stylish young woman? Does she have to be a prostitute?
No, but I think it's obvious that that's how she's dressed.
right, she's dressing provocatively and then the way she's interacting with the people, she's definitely sending that vibe.
Would you like to touch my face?
Uh-huh.
Would you like to come to my house and touch my
Right.
face?
Right.
Well, that, but
I mean, I would say
does she have to be
okay,
a prostitute?
I mean, no, but I
Like
would say
like
she's
the former girl,
it's,
maybe.
It's provocative. I mean, not overtly so, but it's also Scarlett Johansson. I mean, it's no accident they cast a very attractive movie star in this role. If it wasn't her, it would have been somebody else equally beautiful, which is part of the point, right?
It was part of the point to get men. Yeah.
But I think it's interesting that she's at one scene early. She's putting on lipstick. She's looking in a mirror, and then later, after she's sort of transforming or becoming more self-aware, she looks in a mirror and sees something else that I guess she didn't see before.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of interesting. Lots
It
of
is.
thematic stuff. There's also the sort of
I think
insect.
Sorry, but it
parallel.
reinforces that growth, I think.
Yeah. But the reason I bring that up is because she sort of starts beginning her journey after looking in that mirror, but she's looked in mirrors before,
Right.
so there's something else happening.
Right.
The other thing I was going to mention was the insect parallels in this movie, which is when she's trading places the first time with the former girl. She sees an ant on her body and holds it up, and we see an extreme close-up of an ant,
Yeah,
which is very
which is
alien.
cool.
Bugs are very alien up
Right.
close, so there's that. And then the score, which sounds like a bunch of bees or buzzing insects. Thought that was kind of interesting. There was something else, there's like a fly that's trapped behind a pane of glass at one point. We see that too, which is obviously a metaphor for her being trapped in this role.
Good.
But stuff like that I noticed.
Well, but she frees the fly.
Does she freely fly?
She does. She opens the door so the flag can get out.
Oh, okay. Good. Okay.
See, there you go.
It's opening the door to her newfound freedom.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and then, of course, the biggest element of her expressing her freedom was what? Abandoning the van.
See, that could be because the van was part of that.
Right.
That's
her oppression was the van.
Yeah.
part of her
Our oppression.
role, if you want to call it that, was driving that van, and she was leaving that role, so she had.
Like I said when I was seeing this, I mean, I understand the utilitarian nature of a van to take bodies and everything, but if you really want to attract guys, maybe she should be driving like a Maserati. Or something.
Right. Yeah.
Well, they use the van in a very utility way because one
yes,
time
yes.
the motorcycle guy put his motorcycle in.
Right, and it's also good for hiding film crews.
Right. Yeah.
Cameras.
Yeah,
Right.
lots of cameras. Yeah,
Because people getting in the van didn't know they were in a van that had cameras. So,
it's
but
pretty cool.
I think this is an interesting movie. I mean, definitely unconventional for sure. And I know it's interesting with you, Roger, because sometimes I notice things that are vague, like a David Lynch movie or something, lands better. Like Eraserhead, for example, which you really love,
Of
compared
course.
to a movie like this, which it seemed to completely didn't work for you.
It doesn't work for me. Am I saying no one should see this? No, I'm
of course
saying
not.
if you make it 15 minutes in and you're like, why is she driving this van everywhere? It's not going to stop.
Leave the van.
She does leave the
Let the van go.
And
Just let it go.
this is a very much, I think the term art film definitely applies here, right? There is the usual tropes of long shots on people just staring at each other or somebody just staring in a mirror or things like that. So just be aware it is an art form or art kind of film. It was a box office failure. Critics liked this movie way better than the general public that have seen it. Is it worth seeing? Give it a shot.
I'd say watch it.
But again, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
if you're not jiving with it within a half an hour, you can go on to something else.
And I would say
No,
that
you
I
should
would say
stick
that
with
it is
If you start,
artsy,
you should finish.
but it's not like Skinamarink artsy.
Right, which I
No.
really enjoyed Skinamarink. By
No,
the way.
Gene hated it,
Skinamarink
and
was
Gene
hate
hated
that
it.
movie. I hate
See,
that
that's
movie.
one that I brought up. He said last time that I'm like 4 for 4, but I remember you didn't like that movie at all.
Yeah,
But this movie I think is a little more approachable than Skinamarink, which you really have to be prepared for. Knowing going in.
Definitely
If you
agree
don't
with
know this
that.
is an art film going in, you're probably going to be okay if you're okay with all the other stuff. So
Yeah,
that's what I'll say.
Yeah, no, Skinamarink is definitely on its own island. But this movie just didn't work for me. I'm never going to watch it again, even though this was my second viewing of it, and I'm going to move on to something that I really enjoy next.
With no vans.
Yeah, Roger has a problem with vans. Maybe something happened in your youth.
No,
in
but
a
like the
van?
Texas
There's
Chainsaw
something-
Massacre when they're
something
driving the
bothers
van
you with
around,
it?
yeah.
I'm
You're
down
fine
with
with
that
that?
van. But
Maybe it
it's-
has I think a Ford van. Maybe
But the
you're-
van
you're
was
okay
going-
with domestically made vans.
the
but
van was going somewhere, and then they got there, and
The
then they
Ford-
stopped driving the van.
Well, I think I think this movie definitely leans into the unconventional nature of a lot of things versus it's not traditional storytelling, and if that's all
No,
you
it's
like,
not.
don't watch this movie.
Right, it's
But if you're
definitely
open for something unusual, different that might get your brain pointed in new directions, then I'd recommend it.
yeah, that's well said. Good job.
definitely.
Good job.
You're going through the character of the alien who's not familiar with stuff, and if that's your thing, it'll probably work for you.
Yeah.
Gene, what are we doing next week?
There's some movies in the theater right now, which is a possibility.
Are you talking The Monkey?
Oh, yeah.
It's an adaptation of a Stephen King story, so yeah, we could do The Monkey.
That's Osgood Perkins, right?
Yes, Osgood Perkins, absolutely.
I'm fine with The Monkey.
Did you get my text about the mutations?
I did, but
Is that a
I
band?
did.
No.
I didn't investigate it at all, though.
We absolutely are going to do the mutations at some point. I just had the best time of. I had not seen that since like probably 1982 or something. Watched it on Shudder, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm in heaven right here. It is beautiful.
Is this like disgusting blood and guts
No,
horror?
not at all.
Oh,
It's
okay.
1973, and it's got Donald Pleasance playing this mad scientist guy, and it's kind of a cross between Todd Browning's Freaks and Obsessed Mad Scientist movie. It is a laugh riot. I
Oh, it's
loved
a comedy.
every. Oh no, not
Not
on
a
any
comedy.
level.
Oh, but it turns out that
It
way.
is beautiful.
I haven't
to
heard
fit
of this
it
one.
in.
Who's the director?
Oh, that's the other awesome part is, and I cannot remember the director's name, but he won the Academy Award for Best Director in like 1956 for And I can't even remember that now. You'll have to tune into the podcast when we do it. But
Yeah.
I might have to check.
you
this
know,
one
and
out.
so I just love the fact that like with Chainsaw 2, we had Academy Award winning Dennis Hopper slumming in Chainsaw 2, and now I'm watching The Mutations, which is also known as Freakmaker, which is a way better title. And then I'm like, oh, this director, and it's like I know that guy, and then I looked him up, and I'm like, oh my God, what is he doing with this movie?
Everyone has to pay the rent, so
That's true.
if he has a mortgage payment, you want to buy a new car, so there you go.
Right, but anyway, Scott, anything more to say about Under the Skin?
Well, we haven't talked about the nudity at all. But there's
quite a bit.
several scenes of nudity.
There's quite a bit. If you want to
Interesting-
see Scarlett Johansson with no
Interesting,
clothes,
yeah,
then this
an
is your movie.
A-lister who had never done nudity before and hasn't since. I
Right.
think she'd said. I tried looking for a quote from her about that, but she clearly felt that it was motivated and not just exploitive. So
I would agree with
and
that.
I agree also. And you do see male nudity in this movie also.
Yeah.
It's not just her, which is a little uncomfortable at times because we're not used to seeing that. But it definitely has a place in this movie. So.
Oh yeah, I would agree with Scarlett Johansson. It is thematically important.
And she's discovering who she is.
Right.
So.
But I'm also okay with unthematically important nudity in certain movies.
Oh, right. I thought you were going to throw the van in there again.
No. She is never nude in the van.
That's true. Yeah.
Gene, anything final?
I gotta just say, Silent Night, Deadly Night is just the worst movie in the world for just unnecessary nudity. Sometimes it moves the story along, and sometimes it's like, that's the stupidest thing.
And it's interesting too as a filmmaker, like scenes like that, because I often wonder, it's like, okay, number one, if it's not necessary, why is it in there? And
Right.
How much pressure are you putting on actors to do that kind of stuff, which is clearly something that's in the industry. I mean, it's not unusual for that to happen, but
Well, Scott, if you're going to impale Linnea Quigley on deer antlers, of course she's going to be nude when that happens.
is that right? Is that part of the thematic importance of the film?
Exactly.
Okay. Because deep down we're all just naked, right?
Right, exactly. There you go. Oh my gosh, Scott, thanks so much for coming in. And
Thank you.
we're going to keep an eye out for your new movie when you release it, Theater of Pain. We're thinking summer?
Yes, I'm trying for summer, but boy, it's slow. Post-production's a slog,
Yeah. Well, it's a space opera.
Oh, so that's what it's
Well, I don't know. I'm just wondering if it's special effects or...
Driven? No, it's not.
No. So we'll be checking that. We'll be back next week with something.
The monkey.
It'll be the monkey? Okay, we'll
monkey.
be talking about the monkey next week. We'll catch you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Right.